Finally found you, Nadine. The words slither through the open car window like venom, barely above a whisper, meant only for her ears. Deputy Colt Brennan's flashlight beam cuts across the interior of the black sedan, catching the shimmer of gold fabric, the dark skin of the woman behind the wheel, and nothing else matters to him now. His hand rests on the doorframe, knuckles white with 3 years of waiting. The woman in the driver's seat does not flinch, does not move. Her fingers remain precisely positioned on the steering wheel at 10 and 2, exactly where they had been before the blue and red lights erupted behind her on this empty stretch of County Road 7. The gold evening gown she wears catches the harsh flashlight beam, turning her into something luminous against the darkness of the Georgia night. She has never seen this man before in her life. Behind Brennan's patrol car, a second unit idles with its headlights blazing, casting long shadows across the cracked asphalt. The dispatch radio crackles with static, and then a voice, clinical and damning. Black female, gold dress, luxury vehicle, possible stolen. All units in vicinity respond. The woman's eyes move to the rearview mirror. 2 officers in the second vehicle. One stepping out now, hand already resting on his service weapon. The road stretches empty in both directions. No other headlights. No witnesses except the pine trees standing sentinel in the humid darkness. "Step out of the vehicle!" Brennan's voice has shifted now, louder, official, but underneath it pulses something personal, something hungry. She reaches slowly for the door handle, and as she does, a single thought crystallizes in her mind with absolute clarity. Whoever Nadine is, whatever she did to this man, the price is about to come due on the wrong account. The door opens. The gold dress spills out into the night, and somewhere in the distance, thunder rolls across the Georgia sky like a warning no one will heed. 3 hours earlier, the apartment on Whitmore Street sat quiet in the late afternoon light. Vivian Okafor moved through her bedroom with the precision of someone who had learned that details matter, that the difference between success and failure often lived in the smallest choices. The gold evening gown hung on the closet door, catching the sunlight streaming through the window. Floor-length silk with a modest neckline. Elegant without being ostentatious. She had selected it specifically for tonight's event, the Callaway Community Foundation's annual charity gala, where the county's wealthiest donors would gather to celebrate their generosity, while servers in white jackets circulated with champagne flutes. She checked the dress for any imperfection, running her fingers along the seams. Satisfied, she moved to her dresser and opened the top drawer, removing a white handkerchief. Her hands worked automatically, folding the fabric into a precise triangle, then unfolding it and starting again. 3 times she repeated this process before placing the handkerchief in her evening clutch. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. Unknown number. She answered on the second ring but said nothing. Waiting. "The vehicle is in Garage B, Level 2, Space 47. The male voice was flat, professional. "Keys are in the magnetic box under the rear bumper. Do not allow anyone to see your face before 9 p.m. The credentials you need are in the glove compartment." The line went dead before she could respond. Vivienne set the phone down and walked to the window, looking out at the quiet street below. A neighbor was watering his lawn. 2 children rode bicycles in lazy circles at the end of the block. Normal life, proceeding normally, unaware of the currents moving beneath the surface. She returned to her preparation. Shoes next, black heels with modest height, comfortable enough for a long evening. Then jewelry. A simple gold chain that matched the dress, small earrings that would not draw attention. The goal was to blend, to be seen as just another wealthy guest at just another charity event. At exactly 6:15 p.m., she locked her front door. Checked it once, twice, 3 times. An old habit, born from years of understanding that the unlocked door, the unchecked detail, the overlooked variable, those were the things that destroyed operations. The walk to Garage B took 11 minutes. The parking structure was nearly empty at this hour, most residents still at work or dinner. Her footsteps echoed against the concrete as she descended to level 2. Space 47 held a black sedan, current model year, polished to a mirror shine. Unremarkable in every way except for the subtle reinforcement visible around the windows if you knew what to look for, and the license plate that would trigger very specific alerts in very specific databases. She retrieved the keys from their hiding spot and slid into the driver's seat. The leather was cool against her bare arms, the interior immaculate. She opened the glove compartment and found a slim leather folder. Inside, credentials she would need for tonight, along with a single typed note. Trust no one at the gala, especially the generous ones. The engine started with a whisper. She pulled out of the garage and into the evening traffic, heading north toward Callaway County, and whatever waited there. The gas station appeared 40 minutes into the drive, a small independent operation with 2 pumps and a convenience store that had seen better decades. Vivian's fuel gauge showed 3/4 full, more than enough to reach her destination, but something made her pull in anyway. Perhaps the coffee she had skipped that afternoon. Perhaps something else. That instinct that had served her well over the years, the feeling of being watched. She parked at the far pump and stepped out, the gold dress drawing immediate attention from the attendant visible through the store window. A middle-aged white man with a substantial belly and a trucker cap, he stared openly as she walked toward the entrance. The bell above the door chimed as she entered. The store smelled of stale coffee and hot dog water, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. She moved to the coffee station, selecting a medium cup and filling it with whatever dark liquid passed for premium roast in this establishment. Behind the counter, the attendant had his phone pressed to his ear, speaking in low tones while his eyes tracked her every movement. "Yeah," he muttered into the phone. "Black lady, fancy dress. You should see the car she's driving." A pause. "I don't know. Probably stolen. Who else drives something like that around here?" Vivian kept her expression neutral as she approached the register. She set the coffee down and reached into her clutch for cash. "Nice car out there," the attendant said, making no move to ring up her purchase. His eyes crawled over her dress, her jewelry, her face. "Yours?" "Yes." "Huh." He scratched his chin, still making no move toward the register. "Don't see many cars like that around Callaway. Don't see many people like you driving them, either." Behind him, a sign on the wall proclaimed in bold letters, "We reserve the right to refuse service. Callaway County Ordinance 14-7. Vivian placed a $5 bill on the counter. "Keep the change." She took her coffee and walked out without waiting for a response. Behind her, she could hear him already back on the phone, voice rising with excitement about the suspicious woman in the gold dress. The parking lot held 3 other vehicles now: a pickup truck with mud-caked wheels, a minivan with a family visible inside, and a silver Mercedes that had not been there when she arrived. A woman stood beside the Mercedes, blonde hair perfectly styled, designer sunglasses pushed up on her head despite the fading light. She held her phone at an angle that could only mean one thing: click. The shutter sound carried across the quiet lot. The woman had just photographed the sedan's license plate. Their eyes met briefly. The blonde woman smiled. a sharp expression that held no warmth, and slid into her Mercedes without a word. The luxury car pulled away, heading north on the same road Vivian needed to travel. If you are enjoying this story, tap that subscribe button so you do not miss what happens next. Vivian returned to her sedan and sat for a moment, cataloging what she had observed. The attendant's phone call, the blonde woman's photograph, the too convenient timing of both. Individually, these could be explained as the ordinary prejudice she had encountered her entire life. Together, they formed a pattern that made her neck prickle with warning. She opened her phone and navigated to an app buried 3 folders deep, a simple interface with a single red button. She pressed it, and a small indicator light confirmed. Recording active. Then she pulled out of the gas station and continued north, toward Callaway County, and the gala that awaited. County Road 7 stretched through rural Georgia like a scar through farmland. 2 lanes of cracked asphalt, bordered by pine forests, and the occasional dirt driveway leading to homes invisible from the road. The speed limit was 55, and Vivian maintained exactly 53. Her cruise control set, dirty hands steady on the wheel. The first patrol car appeared in her rearview mirror at 8:47 p.m. It came from a crossroad she had passed 30 seconds earlier, pulling onto the highway behind her with no lights, no siren, just the distinctive silhouette of a Callaway County Sheriff's cruiser settling into position 3 car lengths back. Vivian continued at her steady pace, 53 miles per hour. Proper lane position. Turn signal used for every lane adjustment, though there was nowhere to turn on this empty stretch of road. Textbook driving that gave no legal justification for a stop. The second patrol car appeared 2 minutes later, emerging from another side road to take position behind the first. 2 cruisers now, following a vehicle that had committed no violation, on a road with no other traffic. She watched them in her mirror, waiting patient. At 8:51 p.m., the lights came on, blue and red strobing through the darkness, reflecting off the pine trees, turning the night into a disco of law enforcement authority. No siren, just the silent scream of those lights demanding compliance. Vivian checked her phone one final time. The recording app showed duration 4 minutes, 37 seconds. Active. She engaged her turn signal, reduced speed gradually, and pulled onto the shoulder. The sedan came to a complete stop, and she placed both hands on the steering wheel, fingers spread, clearly visible. Both patrol cars stopped behind her, their headlights blazing into her mirrors. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the driver's door of the lead cruiser opened, and a figure stepped out, backlit by the harsh lights, features invisible, but posture unmistakable. This was not a routine traffic stop. This was something else entirely. The flashlight hit her face first, blinding white light flooding the interior of the sedan through her open window. She did not raise her hand to shield her eyes, did not move at all, kept her palms pressed flat against the steering wheel where they could be clearly seen. License and registration. The voice belonged to the silhouette behind the flashlight. Male, deep, carrying the weight of authority and something else. Something that sounded almost like anticipation. "I would like you to identify yourself first, officer." Her voice came out steady, calm. Georgia Code 0.C.G.A Section 17-5-25 requires officers to identify themselves and state the reason for a traffic stop before requesting documentation. The flashlight beam wavered slightly. Then it steadied, and when the voice came again, it had dropped to that whisper meant only for her ears. "Finally found you, Nadine." The name landed like a stone in still water, sending ripples through everything. Vivian's mind processed it instantly. He had called her by a name that was not hers, with a familiarity that suggested history, with a tone that promised consequences. "My name is Vivian Okafor. I believe you have confused me with someone else." The flashlight clicked off. For a moment, she could see nothing, her eyes struggling to adjust after the blinding light. Then, shapes resolved themselves. A tall man in a deputy's uniform, broad shoulders, military posture, face carved from granite and grudge. Deputy Colt Brennan. His nameplate caught the reflected glow from the patrol car's headlights. "Step out of the vehicle." His voice had shifted back to official, loud enough for anyone nearby to hear. "Slowly. Keep your hands where I can see them." Behind him, a second officer had emerged from the lead patrol car and now stood at the rear of the sedan, hand resting on his weapon. Younger, bulkier, with the eager energy of someone who enjoyed this part of the job. His nameplate read, Dunmore. Vivian opened the door slowly, precisely, making no sudden movements. The gold dress complicated things, the fabric catching on the seat as she pivoted, requiring her to gather it with one hand while keeping the other visible. She stood beside the car, the shoulder gravel shifting under her heels, and waited. Brennan circled her, flashlight back on, beam traveling up and down her body in a way that had nothing to do with officer safety. "Quite the dress for a drive through the country." His voice dripped with implications. "Where are you headed all dressed up like that?" "I am attending a charity event in Callaway, the gala at the Harrington estate." "The Harrington Gala," Brennan laughed, a sound without humor. "That's for donors, important people. What business would someone like you have there?" "I was invited." "Invited?" He said the word like it was a lie by definition. "And this car, you were invited to drive it too?" "The vehicle is mine to use for the evening." "Yours to use." Brennan stepped closer, close enough that she could smell the coffee on his breath, see the small scar above his left eyebrow, note the way his jaw muscles tightened with controlled anger. "See, I got a report about this vehicle. Possible stolen. Black female driver. Gold dress. And here you are, matching that description exactly." "The vehicle is not stolen. If you run the plates, you will find that the registration is current and valid." "Oh, I intend to run everything." His voice dropped again, intimate and threatening. "I've waited 3 years for this, Nadine. 3 years since you humiliated me in front of everyone. You remember that night at Rusty's? You remember what you said?" Vivian met his eyes directly. "My name is Vivian Okafor. I have never been to any establishment called Rusty's. I do not know anyone named Nadine." "You have the wrong person, Deputy Brennan." For a fraction of a second, something flickered across his face. Doubt, perhaps, or simply irritation that she was not playing the role he had assigned her. Then the mask slammed back into place. "Dunmore!" he called over his shoulder without breaking eye contact. "Check the vehicle, thoroughly." The younger officer moved toward the sedan with obvious eagerness. He yanked open the driver's door first, leaning in to examine the interior, then popped the trunk release. "I have not given consent to search my vehicle," Vivian stated clearly. "Don't need consent when we have probable cause." Brennan's smile showed too many teeth. "Suspected stolen vehicle gives us all the probable cause we need. The vehicle is not stolen. Running the plates will confirm this." "Maybe. Or maybe the registration is fake too. Lots of sophisticated operations out there, stealing luxury cars, creating false paperwork." He shrugged. "We have to be thorough, for public safety." Dunmore emerged from the car, holding her phone. The screen was dark, but the device was clearly still powered on. He glanced at it, then tossed it onto the passenger seat with casual disregard. "Nothing in the front," he reported. "Checking the trunk now." Vivian stood motionless as Dunmore walked to the rear of the vehicle. The trunk lid was already up, and he disappeared behind it. The sounds of items being moved reaching her ears. Her evening clutch. The leather folder with her credentials. Whatever else had been placed in that trunk before she took possession of the vehicle. She did not know what was in that trunk. She had not checked. A mistake, perhaps, born from trust in the process, trust in the people who had arranged this evening. "Well, well." Dunmore's voice carried a note of triumph. "Would you look at this?" He emerged from behind the trunk holding something small, a clear plastic bag containing white powder. He held it up so the patrol car's headlights could illuminate it, making sure Brennan could see, making sure she could see. "Found this tucked under the spare tire," Dunmore announced. "Looks like somebody's been naughty." The bag had not been there when she left the garage. She was certain of this, which meant either it had been placed there before she took possession, or it had been placed there just now. Dunmore's smile told her everything she needed to know about which option was more likely. "That is not mine." Her voice remained level despite the ice forming in her stomach. "I demand that item be properly documented with full chain of custody procedures. I want photographs of where it was allegedly found. Timestamps and your badge numbers recorded." Brennan laughed. "Listen to her. Sounds like she's done this before." He stepped closer, crowding her space. "Chain of custody, procedures. You know a lot about how this works, don't you, Nadine?" "My name is Vivian Okafor." "Your name is whatever I say it is." All pretense of professionalism had vanished from his voice now. "You're in my county, on my road, and right now you're looking at possession with intent to distribute. That's 5 to 10 years, minimum, unless you want to start being a little more cooperative." The word cooperative carried weight, implication, threat. Vivian understood exactly what he meant, and exactly what kind of man she was dealing with. "I would like to speak with your supervisor." "My supervisor?" Brennan glanced at Dunmore, amused. "She wants to talk to my supervisor." "I am entitled to request a supervisor on scene for any traffic stop. That is department policy in every jurisdiction in this state." "Maybe so, but supervisors are busy people. Might take a while for one to get all the way out here." Brennan made a show of looking at his watch. "Could be an hour, could be 2. You want to stand out here on the side of the road that long, in that pretty dress?" Headlights appeared in the distance, another vehicle approaching from the south. Both officers tensed slightly, watching as the car drew closer, slowed, and then pulled onto the shoulder ahead of the patrol cars. A silver Mercedes, the same one from the gas station. The blonde woman stepped out, her designer clothes immaculate, her expression arranged into careful concern. She walked toward them with the confidence of someone who had never been questioned about her right to be anywhere. "Officers," her voice carried the honeyed tones of old Southern money. "Is everything all right here? I saw this vehicle earlier at the gas station down on Route 12, and something just seemed off about it. I was going to call it in myself." "Ma'am, please return to your vehicle." Brennan's tone had shifted, deferential now. "This is police business." Of course. But she made no move to leave, her eyes fixed on Vivian with an expression that mixed curiosity and satisfaction. "I'm Celeste Harrington. My family is hosting the gala tonight. I just wanted to make sure our guests are safe on the roads." Harrington. The name connected instantly. The charity foundation, the gala. One of the wealthiest families in Callaway County. A woman whose word carried weight, whose complaints would be heard, whose observations would be believed without question. This woman claimed she was invited to your gala, Brennan said. That true? Celeste's perfectly shaped eyebrows rose. To our gala? I don't recognize her, and I personally approved every name on the guest list. She paused, tilting her head as if studying an interesting specimen. Some people don't belong in certain cars, driving to certain events. I'm sure you understand what I mean, Deputy. The officers exchanged glances. Whatever doubt might have existed about their justification for this stop had just evaporated, replaced by the word of a Harrington. I have credentials that confirm my invitation, Vivian said. They are in the glove compartment of the vehicle, if you would allow me to retrieve them. Oh, I'm sure you have all kinds of credentials. Celeste's smile was winter-sharp. Amazing what you can buy online these days. Fake IDs, fake invitations, fake everything. She turned to Brennan. I do hope you'll be thorough, Deputy, for everyone's safety. She walked back to her Mercedes without waiting for a response. The luxury car pulled away, continuing north toward the Harrington estate and the gala that Vivian would now almost certainly never attend. Brennan watched the Mercedes disappear, then turned back to Vivian with renewed purpose. Well, looks like your story just fell apart. The crowd arrived in pieces, the way disaster always attracts witnesses. First, a pickup truck that slowed to observe and then pulled over 50 yards ahead. Two men in work clothes stepped out, phones already raised. Then a sedan with a family inside. The parents arguing about whether to stop. The teenage son in the back seat filming through the window. Then others, drawn by the blue and red lights, by the tableau of authority and submission playing out on the side of County Road 7. Put those phones away! Dunmore stalked toward the growing cluster of onlookers. This is official police business. Recording officers without permission is interference. That is not accurate. Vivian's voice carried clearly across the distance. The First Amendment protects the right of citizens to record police officers performing their duties in public spaces. There is no requirement for permission. Dunmore's face darkened. He turned toward a young black man who had emerged from the pickup truck, phone held steady, focused on capturing everything. You! Put that away, right now, or I'll arrest you for obstruction. The young man hesitated, but kept recording. I know my rights, officer. I'm standing on a public road, not interfering with anything. I have every legal right to document this. I said put it away. Dunmore advanced, hand moving to his belt. Not to his weapon, not yet, but to the taser. The threat was clear. Let him record. Brennan's voice cut through the tension, surprising everyone. But there was no change of heart in his tone, only calculation. Let them all record. It won't matter. They're about to witness a legitimate arrest. He turned back to Vivian, positioning himself so the gathering crowd could see his face, his official posture, his performance of proper procedure. Ma'am, based on the suspected stolen vehicle report, the inconsistencies in your statement, and the contraband discovered in your trunk, I am placing you under arrest. On what charges? Possession of a controlled substance with intent to distribute, driving a suspected stolen vehicle, and whatever else we find when we get you to the station. I would like those charges documented in writing. I would like the badge numbers of all officers present. I would like the incident report number. She spoke calmly, each request falling like stones into a well. And I would like to formally request, for the record, that you identify yourself and state your name and badge number before proceeding. Brennan's jaw tightened. For a moment, something flickered in his eyes. That same doubt from before, quickly suppressed. Deputy Colt Brennan, Badge number 6722. Satisfied? I would like that recorded. It will be. Everything's being recorded. He gestured to the crowd with their phones. Now turn around and place your hands behind your back. This story is just getting started. Hit that like button and stay tuned for what comes next. The gold dress made the movement awkward, but Vivian complied, turning slowly, presenting her wrists. The metal handcuffs were cold against her skin, and when Dunmore applied them, he cranked them several notches tighter than necessary. The steel bit into her flesh, and she felt her fingers immediately begin to tingle from restricted circulation. Not so comfortable, is it? Dunmore's breath was hot against her ear as he leaned in. Shouldn't resist arrest if you don't want to face consequences. I have not resisted anything. The cuffs are too tight and are causing injury. I am formally requesting that you document the condition of my wrists. Document this. Dunmore grabbed her shoulder and spun her around, then pushed her forward. She stumbled on the gravel in her heels, barely catching herself before hitting the hood of the patrol car. The impact still jarred her, and she felt the fabric of her dress catch on something, heard the rip of silk. From the crowd, gasps and angry murmurs. More phones raised. More evidence being captured. But evidence of what? What would the footage show? A woman in a gold dress being arrested? Resisting? Not complying? The narrative could be shaped. Had been shaped. Was being shaped even now by Brennan's careful performance of procedure. Her phone. She suddenly remembered. Still in the car, still recording, the app running since before the stop began. Audio evidence that could not be edited, could not be framed, could not be denied. If it survived, if they did not find it, if. Headlights again, this time from the north. A third patrol car, moving fast. Lights off. It pulled in behind the others, and a new figure emerged, moving with the deliberate pace of rank. Sergeant's stripes visible on the uniform. A tall man with thinning hair and the kind of face that had learned to remain expressionless through years of navigating department politics. What do we have here? Sergeant Rowan Vickers surveyed the scene with practiced assessment. The arrested woman, the crowd with phones, the two deputies who had called this in. Brennan, report. Suspected stolen vehicle, Sergeant. Driver matched the description in the dispatch. During search, Dunmore found what appears to be cocaine in the trunk. Approximately 2 ounces, packaged for distribution. The vehicle is not stolen. Vivian spoke before Vickers could respond. Running the plates will confirm this immediately. And I did not consent to any search. Deputy Brennan claimed probable cause based solely on a description that amounts to black woman in expensive car. That does not meet the legal standard established in Terry v. Ohio. Vickers' eyebrows rose slightly. He looked at her more closely now, taking in the gold dress, the composed demeanor, the legal terminology delivered without hesitation. Ma'am, Terry v. Ohio established that officers can conduct a brief investigative stop based on reasonable suspicion. His voice was patient, explaining, confident. The dispatch report of a possible stolen vehicle creates that suspicion. Once the stop was initiated, the search was justified under Georgia v. Randolph. Georgia v. Randolph addresses consent to search by co-inhabitants of a residence. Vivian met his eyes directly. It has no application to a vehicle stop. You are thinking, perhaps, of Arizona v. Gant, which limits vehicle searches incident to arrest, but even Gant requires that the arrestee be unsecured and within reaching distance of the vehicle, or that officers have reason to believe evidence relevant to the crime of arrest might be found. Neither condition has been established here. Silence. Vickers stared at her, and for the first time, genuine uncertainty crossed his features. He glanced at Brennan, then back at the woman in handcuffs who had just schooled him on Fourth Amendment case law. "The vehicle is flagged as suspected stolen," Vickers said finally. "That gives us grounds to hold you while we verify registration. If everything checks out, you'll be released." "And the alleged contraband that was discovered after I was already detained, on grounds that will not survive scrutiny? That evidence, which appeared in my trunk only after your deputy had unsupervised access to my vehicle. Are you accusing my officers of planting evidence?" "I am stating facts. I had no contraband in my vehicle. Your deputy searched my vehicle. Your deputy claims to have found contraband. I leave the logical conclusions to anyone watching." Around them, the crowd had grown larger. More phones. More witnesses. More people who had heard every word. Vickers looked at them, calculating exposure, calculating risk, calculating the distance between proper procedure and what was actually happening here. "Dunmore." His voice had shifted, becoming harder. "Was the search conducted properly?" "Absolutely, Sergeant. By the book. I found the substance in the trunk, under the spare tire, concealed but visible once I lifted the tire cover." "And you, Deputy Brennan, you had probable cause for the stop? Dispatch report of a suspected stolen vehicle. She matched the description. When I approached, she was evasive, refused to provide documentation without demands, cited legal statutes as if she had practiced responses ready." Brennan's voice oozed reasonableness. "Classic behavior of someone who knows they're guilty and has prepared defenses." Vickers nodded slowly. The uncertainty had faded, replaced by the comfortable armor of institutional solidarity. "Ma'am, you'll be transported to the station for processing. We'll verify the vehicle registration there. If you're telling the truth, this will all be sorted out. If not—" He shrugged. "Then you're exactly where you need to be." Another set of headlights. Another vehicle approaching. This one was an unmarked sedan, dark and official, the kind of car that screamed detective even without markings. The driver emerged with the casual confidence of someone who belonged here. Detective's shield on his belt. Expensive shoes, cheap suit. A face that had learned to smile without meaning it. "Heard the call on the radio." Detective Milo Ashford strode toward the group. "Thought I'd swing by, see if you needed assistance." "We have it handled," Vickers said, but there was something in his voice now, a slight hesitation. "I'm sure you do, but this is a possession case, right? That's my specialty." Ashford moved to the sedan's trunk, peering inside. 2 ounces, you said? That's a felony weight. This goes to my unit." He reached into the trunk, and Vivian watched as his hands moved with practiced efficiency, adjusting something, confirming something, ensuring that whatever story needed to be told would have physical evidence to support it. "I want full chain of custody documentation." Her voice cut through the night air. "Every officer who has touched that vehicle, every piece of evidence recovered. Timestamps and photographs. All of it." Ashford turned to look at her, and something cold moved behind his eyes. "Certainly, ma'am. Everything by the book." His smile showed teeth, but no warmth. "Wouldn't want anyone to claim improper procedure, would we?" The patrol car smelled of old coffee and older sweat, the particular perfume of too many suspects transported through too many nights. Vivian sat in the back seat, hands cuffed behind her, the gold dress bunched awkwardly around her legs, where she had been pushed into the vehicle. Through the cage separating front and back, she could see Brennan behind the wheel, his partner Dunmore beside him. They had not spoken since pulling away from the scene on County Road 7, where the crowd was still dispersing, where her phone still sat in the sedan, where Detective Ashford was documenting evidence that had not existed until he needed it to. The radio crackled occasionally. Routine traffic. Other units, other stops. The machinery of law enforcement grinding through another night in Callaway County. You know, Dunmore broke the silence, twisting in his seat to look at her through the cage. Colt told me about you. Brennan said nothing, eyes fixed on the road ahead. About Nadine, I mean. Dunmore's grin was predatory. About what happened at Rusty's. How she made you look like a fool in front of everyone. How you swore you'd make her pay if you ever found her again. My name is Vivian Okafor. The words came automatically now, a mantra against insanity. I have never been to Rusty's. I am not Nadine. Sure, Dunmore laughed. That's what you'd say, isn't it? 3 years of hiding, changing your look, probably changed your name too. But Colt never forgets a face. Never forgets an insult. Brennan's jaw muscle twitched, but still he said nothing. What did she say to you, anyway? Dunmore continued, clearly enjoying himself. What could one woman possibly say to make you carry a grudge for 3 years? She laughed at me. Brennan's voice was quiet, controlled, but something volcanic churned beneath. In front of everyone, called me a pathetic little man playing dress-up with a badge. Said the only power I'd ever have was the kind I stole from others. The words hung in the air between them. Vivian heard truth in them, the kind of truth that burrowed deep and festered, that turned a man's whole soul toward revenge. That was not me, she said. I have never seen you before tonight. 3 years. Brennan spoke as if she had not said anything. 3 years I've waited. Every time I pulled over a car, part of me hoped. Every time I saw a black woman with that kind of attitude, that kind of look, I wondered. And tonight, his hands tightened on the wheel. Tonight, you drove right into my county, right onto my road, like fate. It is not fate. It is a mistake. You are destroying your career, your life, over a case of mistaken identity. Brennan laughed, a harsh sound. My career? Lady, my career is about to get a major boost. Possession with intent? That's a good collar. And when the DA sees your attitude, your resistance, your obvious sophistication, he's going to throw the book at you. The car turned onto a side road, then another. Vivian tracked the turns automatically, mapping their route, and realized with growing unease that they were not heading toward the station. This is not the way to the sheriff's office. Detour, Brennan said. Construction on Main Street. Have to go around. There was no construction. She had driven through this area 2 hours ago, and the roads had been clear. But she said nothing, watching through the windows as the streetlights grew fewer, the buildings sparser, the night darker. The car turned again, onto a dirt road that disappeared into a stand of pine trees. No streetlights here. No houses visible. Just the headlights cutting through darkness, and the growing certainty that something terrible was about to happen. Where are we? Scenic route. Dunmore's grin had widened. Figured you might want to see some of Callaway's natural beauty before you get locked up for the next decade. The car stopped in a clearing. An abandoned structure loomed ahead, some kind of old warehouse or agricultural building. Its windows dark, its roof partially collapsed. The perfect place for things to happen that no one would ever know about. Brennan killed the engine, but left the headlights on, illuminating the clearing with harsh white light. End of the road, Nadine. My name is Vivian Okafor. Her voice did not shake. though every survival instinct she possessed was screaming. "There are multiple witnesses who saw you take me into custody. My GPS location has been tracked. Whatever you are planning will be documented and prosecuted." Dunmore stepped out of the car and walked to the back door. He yanked it open, reaching for her arm. "Time to get out." She did not move. "I am formally refusing to exit this vehicle. Any physical force you use will constitute assault on an already restrained individual. Your body cam is recording. Your partner's body cam is recording. Everything you do from this moment forward will be evidence." Dunmore's hand closed around her upper arm. He dragged her from the car, the gold dress catching on the door frame, tearing further. Her heels sank into the soft earth of the clearing as he pulled her upright. "Body cams?" He laughed. "We're off duty now. Technical difficulties. Happens all the time." Brennan emerged from the driver's side and walked toward them, his footsteps crunching on gravel and dried leaves. In the harsh headlight glare, his face looked carved from stone, all emotion compressed into something cold and final. 3 years, he said again. "Do you have any idea what those 3 years were like? Every time I closed my eyes, I heard her laughing. Every time someone questioned my authority, I thought of her. She poisoned everything. My confidence, my relationships, my whole sense of who I was. I am sorry that happened to you." Vivian kept her voice steady, choosing each word carefully. "But I am not the woman who hurt you. I am someone else entirely. Someone whose disappearance will trigger investigations you cannot imagine." "Threats now?" Brennan moved closer. "Still trying to talk your way out?" "I am telling you facts. The vehicle I was driving is not registered to any private citizen. It belongs to an organization that will notice when it does not reach its destination. People are expecting me tonight. Important people. When I do not arrive, calls will be made. Searches will begin." "Let them search." Brennan's voice was a whisper now, intimate and terrible. "This county is mine. My people will find what I want them to find. Or they'll find nothing at all." Dunmore tightened his grip on her arm. "Come on, Colt. Let's have some fun." Vivian shifted her weight, feeling the soft earth beneath her feet, calculating angles and distances. The cuffs limited her options severely, but not completely. She had been trained for situations like this, though never in a gold evening gown, never on a dirt clearing in the Georgia night. "You have one chance," she said. "Let me back in that car. Drive me to the station. Process me according to proper procedure. Whatever happens after that, at least you will not have added kidnapping and assault to your charges." Brennan's face twisted. "Charges? There won't be any charges. There won't be any investigation. There won't be anything except a missing woman who was probably into something criminal anyway, who ran when she had the chance, who disappeared into the night." He nodded to Dunmore. "Do it." The larger man yanked her forward toward the abandoned building. Vivian let herself be pulled for 2 steps, then 3, letting him commit to the direction, letting his grip adjust for the expected resistance. On the 4th step, she dropped her weight. The move was simple but effective, her body becoming dead weight, her legs folding beneath her. Dunmore's grip slipped as he was pulled off balance, his own momentum working against him. In that instant of confusion, she twisted, rolling her shoulder into his chest, not striking, but redirecting, using his weight to create distance. Dunmore stumbled, releasing her arm. Brennan shouted something and rushed forward. but headlights suddenly blazed from the dirt road behind them. Another vehicle. Coming fast. For an instant, everyone froze. The approaching car's high beams washed over the clearing, illuminating everything. The patrol car, the abandoned building, the woman in the gold dress, the two officers caught in the act of something that could not be explained. Brennan grabbed Vivian's arm and dragged her back toward the patrol car. His hand clamped over her mouth before she could cry out. "Get in the car," he hissed at Dunmore. "Now!" They shoved her into the back seat, slamming the door. Brennan threw himself behind the wheel and gunned the engine, reversing in a spray of dirt, then swinging the car around toward a second access road she had not noticed. Through the rear window, Vivian watched the other vehicle's headlights fill the clearing, saw a figure emerge, silhouetted against the glare, saw them raise something, a phone perhaps, capturing the license plate of the fleeing patrol car. Then the trees swallowed them, and there was only darkness and the sound of the engine and Brennan's heavy breathing as he pushed the car faster down the narrow road. Captain Lenora Stahl was waiting when they arrived at the station, alerted by calls she had clearly not expected to receive. Her uniform was crisp despite the late hour, but her face showed the strain of someone whose night had just become significantly more complicated. "Brennan!" Her voice carried through the parking lot as they pulled in. "My office, now." "Captain, I have a prisoner to process. Dunmore can handle the processing. My office, now." The interior of the Callaway County Sheriff's Station smelled of industrial cleaner and burned coffee. Vivian was led through a maze of corridors, past officers who stopped their conversations to stare, past holding cells with other occupants who watched her gold dress with dead eyes. The booking area was a fluorescent purgatory of forms and fingerprints. Dunmore handled her processing with barely concealed frustration, each step performed with maximum delay, maximum inconvenience. "Name: Vivian Okafor. Address." She gave her apartment address in Atlanta. "Phone number." "I would like to make my phone call." "After processing." "I am entitled to a phone call within a reasonable time of arrest. That is constitutional law. And you'll get your call." Dunmore's smile was unpleasant. "After processing, which might take a while. Lots of forms. Complex case." The fingerprinting left black ink on her hands that would not fully wash off. The photograph captured her in the gold dress, now torn and dirt-stained, looking nothing like an invited guest to a charity gala. The personal property inventory listed her clutch, her jewelry, her shoes, but not her phone. Still in the sedan. Still recording, perhaps. "Cell 4, Dunmore announced, leading her through another corridor. "You're home for the night. Maybe longer." The holding cell was small and cold. A metal bench along one wall, a toilet with no privacy, a door made of bars. Vivian entered without protest and stood in the center of the space as the door clanged shut behind her. "Phone call," she said. "Processing isn't finished. I have been photographed, fingerprinted, and inventoried. Processing is complete. I am requesting my phone call." Dunmore walked away without responding. Vivian sat on the metal bench, feeling the cold seep through her thin dress. Her wrists ached where the cuffs had bitten in. Her shoulder was sore from Dunmore's grip. Her mind, though, remained clear, cataloging everything: names, badge numbers, timestamps, violations. Brennan, Colt, badge 6722. Deputy. Dunmore, Trey, badge number not yet obtained. Officer. Vickers, Rowan, Sergeant. Misapplied case law, Georgia versus Randolph. Ashford, Milo. Detective. Arrived after search. Handled evidence, possible tampering. The list would grow. It always did. Footsteps echoed in the corridor, not Dunmore's heavy tread, someone lighter, moving with purpose, but also uncertainty. A young woman appeared at the bars, early 20s, officer's uniform, name tag reading Nguyen. She glanced both directions before speaking, her voice barely above a whisper. "Ma'am, the vehicle you were driving." Her eyes were wide with something that looked like fear. "I ran the plates through our system." Vivian rose from the bench. "And?" "It's flagged. Federal flag. The kind that says, 'Do not stop, do not search, do not detain.'" Nguyen swallowed hard. "It says to contact the Department of Justice Liaison Office immediately if any law enforcement interaction occurs." The words hung in the cold air between them. Vivian let them settle, let their implications expand. "Have you contacted the liaison office?" "I." Nguyen looked down the corridor again. "I don't know what to do. Deputy Brennan is in with the captain right now. Sergeant Vickers is processing evidence. Detective Ashford is writing up the arrest report. Everyone seems to think this is a normal booking. But you know it is not." "I know what the system says." Nguyen's voice dropped even lower. "I know what that flag means, and I know that whatever is happening here, it's going to come down on everyone involved." "Then you have a choice." Vivian stepped closer to the bars. "You can do nothing, and when the investigation begins, your name will be on every form, every log, every piece of documentation showing who was present when federal protocols were violated. Or you can do something right now to protect yourself and to ensure that whatever happens next happens according to law." Nguyen's hands twisted together. She was young, new to the job probably, caught between loyalty to her department and the growing certainty that her department had just stepped into something terrible. "What should I do?" "Like and subscribe to see how this story unfolds. Document everything you have seen. Print the vehicle flag information and secure a copy somewhere outside this building. And find a way to get me my phone call. They'll know it was me. They will know it was someone who followed the law when everyone else was breaking it. That is not betrayal. That is integrity." Long seconds passed. Nguyen's inner struggle played across her face, duty fighting self-preservation, conscience wrestling with career. Then she nodded once, quickly, and disappeared down the corridor. The hours passed in increments of cold and silence. Vivian sat on the metal bench, then stood, then sat again. The fluorescent light above her cell never dimmed. The clock on the wall counted minutes that felt like hours. At 1:17 a.m., Brennan appeared at her cell. He looked different now. Some of his earlier certainty eroded, replaced by something that might have been doubt, or might have been anger at complications he had not anticipated. His uniform was rumpled where it had been crisp before. "Comfortable, Nadine?" "My name is Vivian Okafor. I have stated this 6 times now. Your body cam has recorded each instance, along with your repeated use of an incorrect name, which suggests either confusion or intentional harassment." Brennan's face shifted. "My body cam?" "According to department policy, body-worn cameras must be activated during all citizen interactions and may only be deactivated under specific circumstances documented in writing. You activated yours at the beginning of the traffic stop. Whether you remembered to deactivate it is another matter." For the first time since the encounter began, something like genuine concern flickered across Brennan's features. His hand moved unconsciously to the device on his chest. "It's been running." His voice was almost a whisper. "The whole time. Including, presumably, Whatever happened on that dirt road before we reached the station? The blood drained from his face. He turned and walked away quickly, reaching for his radio, speaking in urgent tones that Vivian could not quite hear. She smiled, just slightly, and leaned back against the cold concrete wall. At 3:42 a.m., Vivian finally received her phone call. She dialed a number she had memorized years ago, one that bypassed standard switchboards and connected directly to a desk that was always staffed, regardless of the hour. "This is a secure line," the voice answered. "Identify yourself." "Okafor, Vivian. Badge number redacted for this line." A pause. The sound of keys clicking. Then, "Agent Okafor, you missed your check-in. The asset vehicle shows last position on County Road 7, then went dark. What is your status?" "I am in custody at the Callaway County Sheriff's Station. Arrested on fabricated charges by local law enforcement. The operation has been compromised." Another pause, longer this time. "The Callaway County Sheriff's Station." The voice had hardened. "The director's vehicle is in their possession?" "Affirmative. They are unaware of its significance. They believe they have arrested a car thief." "Stand by." Background noise now, voices conferring, decisions being made at levels far above a county sheriff's pay grade. "We are initiating recovery protocols. A federal team will be on site within 4 hours. Do not reveal your credentials until instructed." "Understood." "And Agent Okafor, the men who did this." "Yes?" "Document everything. We want every violation, every procedural failure, every name. This does not end with your release." The line went dead. Vivian hung up the phone and allowed the officer who had brought her to lead her back to her cell. The clock on the wall showed 3:47 a.m. 4 hours, the voice had said. She could wait 4 hours. At 4:15 a.m., the holding area received an unexpected visitor. Vivian heard her before she saw her. The click of expensive heels on institutional tile. A sound that did not belong in this place of metal and concrete and desperation. Then the visitor appeared at the bars, and Vivian found herself face to face with Celeste Harrington. The blonde woman looked different than she had on the roadside, less certain of herself, her earlier smugness replaced by something that might have been worry. "The gala was a disaster," Celeste said without preamble. "Everyone was talking about the arrest on County Road 7. The videos are everywhere." "I imagine they are." Celeste glanced around, ensuring they were alone. "I need to know something. Who are you really?" "I have told everyone who I am. My name is Vivian Okafor." "That's not what I mean." Celeste moved closer to the bars, lowering her voice. "I've seen the way you handle yourself. The legal knowledge, the composure, the way you talk to Brennan like he was the one who should be worried. That's not how regular people act when they're arrested." "Perhaps I am simply not regular people." Celeste's eyes narrowed. "This was supposed to be simple. Brennan has a grudge. You look like the woman he blames. He stops you, makes your life difficult. You get scared and leave the county and never come back. That's how these things usually work." "Usually," Vivian held her gaze. "But not this time." "No, not this time." Celeste was silent for a moment. "Brennan doesn't know what he's stepped in, does he?" "None of them do." "That remains to be seen." Celeste reached into her purse and withdrew something small, a card with a phone number. She slid it through the bars. "When this is over," she said, "call me. There are things about what's really happening in this county that you should know. Things that go far beyond one deputy's personal vendetta." Then she was gone, her heels clicking away down the corridor, leaving Vivian alone with questions that had just multiplied. The card sat in her hand, a single phone number in elegant script. She tucked it into her dress and waited for the sun to rise. At 6:23 a.m., the sky outside the small window in the corridor had begun to lighten from black to gray. Vivian had not slept. She had spent the hours cataloging, planning, preparing for what would come when the federal team arrived. The main doors of the station opened somewhere beyond her sightline, and new voices filled the halls. Not the tired drawl of night shift deputies, but something sharper, more alert. Footsteps approached her cell, multiple sets, moving with purpose. Then Brennan appeared, and behind him, Captain Stahl, and behind her, two men in dark suits who carried themselves with the unmistakable bearing of federal authority. Brennan's face had gone gray. Whatever conversation had taken place in the captain's office, whatever calls had been made and received, whatever databases had been finally properly checked, he knew now, or at least he suspected. "Ma'am," one of the suited men stepped forward. His credentials were already in his hand, a badge that identified him as Special Agent Morrison, FBI Field Office, Atlanta. "You are Vivian Okafor?" "I am. We need to speak with you, privately." Captain Stahl produced keys and unlocked the cell. Brennan stood to the side, his eyes fixed on the floor, his earlier bravado completely evaporated. "Before I go anywhere," Vivian said, remaining seated on the metal bench, "I want several things documented. I want photographs of the condition of my wrists, where the handcuffs caused injury. I want the booking log printed showing that my requests for a phone call were repeatedly denied. I want the body cam footage from Deputy Brennan's camera preserved immediately. And I want a written acknowledgement that the evidence allegedly found in my vehicle was discovered only after multiple officers had unsupervised access to that vehicle." Special Agent Morrison looked at her with something that might have been respect, then turned to Captain Stahl. "You heard the lady. Everything she asked for. Now." The captain's jaw tightened, but she nodded and began issuing orders. Vivian rose from the bench and stepped out of the cell for the first time in 8 hours. The gold dress was ruined, the fabric torn and stained, but she wore it like armor. As she passed Brennan, she paused. 3 years, she said quietly. You waited 3 years to find a woman who wronged you. You found me instead. Everything that happens from this moment forward is a consequence of that mistake. She walked on before he could respond, following the federal agents toward whatever came next, leaving behind a man whose world had just begun to crumble around him. The morning sun was rising over Callaway County, and everything was about to change. The interrogation room smelled of stale air and old secrets, the kind of room designed to make people feel small, trapped, eager to confess to anything just to escape its claustrophobic embrace. Vivian sat in the metal chair bolted to the floor, her ruined gold dress a stark contrast to the institutional gray walls surrounding her. Special Agent Morrison had positioned himself across the table, his partner standing near the door. Captain Stahl waited outside, visible through the small window, her face a mask of controlled anxiety. "Before we proceed," Morrison said, sliding a recorder onto the table between them, "I need you to confirm your identity for the record. Vivian Okafor. And your position?" She glanced at the window where Stahl watched. "Perhaps we should have this conversation without an audience." Morrison followed her gaze, then nodded to his partner, who moved to the door and spoke briefly with someone outside. The blinds on the window lowered, cutting off Stahl's view. "Better?" "Marginally." Vivian leaned forward slightly. "I assume you have already verified my credentials through the Atlanta field office." "We have. Special Agent Vivian Okafor," Civil Rights Division, currently assigned to a joint task force investigating financial crimes connected to charitable organizations. Morrison's voice remained neutral, professional. What we need to understand is how a joint task force operation ended with you in a county lockup, charged with drug possession. The answer to that question involves Deputy Colt Brennan, a case of mistaken identity, and what I believe to be a coordinated effort to frame me for crimes I did not commit. She paused. It also involves the vehicle I was driving, which I assume is why you arrived so quickly. Morrison exchanged a look with his partner. The director's personal asset vehicle, used for sensitive operations requiring maximum deniability. You were authorized to use it for tonight's operation at the Harrington Gala. I was. The gala was identified as a potential money laundering nexus for the Callaway Community Foundation, which our task force has been investigating for 18 months. I was to attend as a donor, observe, and gather intelligence. Instead, you were stopped on a rural highway, arrested, and the vehicle was impounded by local law enforcement who had no idea what they were dealing with. That is an accurate summary. Morrison leaned back in his chair. Walk me through everything, from the beginning. The story took 40 minutes to tell, with Morrison interrupting periodically to clarify details. The gas station encounter. The blonde woman photographing her license plate. The traffic stop with no legal basis. Brennan's repeated use of the wrong name. The planted evidence. The detour to the abandoned building. When she finished, Morrison sat in silence for a long moment. You're saying Deputy Brennan stopped you because he believed you were someone else entirely. A woman named Nadine, who allegedly humiliated him 3 years ago. That is what he stated, repeatedly, on what I believe is still active body cam footage. And the contraband found in the vehicle was not present when I took possession of that vehicle. I did not check the trunk before departing, which was an oversight on my part, but I am certain the drugs were planted either before I received the vehicle or during the search conducted by Deputy Dunmore and Detective Ashford. Morrison made a note. Detective Milo Ashford. He arrived at the scene after the initial stop? He did. Claimed he heard the call on the radio and came to assist. His handling of the evidence was suspicious. I requested full chain of custody documentation, which I doubt was properly maintained. It wasn't. Morrison's partner spoke for the first time, looking up from his phone. I just got confirmation from our forensics team. The evidence bag containing the alleged cocaine shows only one set of fingerprints. Detective Ashford's. The words settled into the room like stones dropped into still water. No fingerprints from Deputy Brennan or Deputy Dunmore, Vivian said, even though they supposedly discovered and initially handled the evidence. None. The bag was pristine except for Ashford's prints, which suggests he was the one who placed it there. Morrison stood and walked to the small window, lifting the blinds slightly to look out at the station beyond. This is bigger than one deputy's personal vendetta, isn't it? I believe so. Vivian's voice was steady. The Callaway Community Foundation has been funneling money through shell companies for years. Someone in this department is protecting those operations. Tonight's stop may have been about Brennan's grudge, but someone else saw an opportunity to eliminate a federal investigation before it could expose them. Do you have evidence of that connection? Not yet, but I know where to look. The next 6 hours transformed the Callaway County Sheriff's Station from a place of routine law enforcement into the epicenter of a federal investigation. Vivian was moved from the interrogation room to a small office that had been commandeered as a temporary operations center. Her phone, retrieved from the impounded sedan, revealed that the recording app had captured everything. 2 hours, montage, and 17 minutes of audio from the moment she activated it at the gas station to the moment the phone's battery finally died in the early morning hours. The recording was damning. Special Agent Morrison played it back through speakers, the voices filling the small room with their own condemnation. Brennan's whispered, "Finally found you, Nadine, at the traffic stop." Dunmore's "Time to teach some respect" at the abandoned building. The sound of struggle, of car doors slamming, of an engine racing away from headlights that had interrupted something terrible. "Who was in the other vehicle?" Morrison asked. "The one that arrived at the clearing?" "I do not know. I did not see the driver clearly, but they witnessed what was happening and apparently called 911. Morrison's partner pulled up a file on his laptop. Callaway County Dispatch received a call at 9:52 p.m. last night. Caller reported a woman being assaulted by police officers on Miller Road. 2 cruisers involved. The caller gave a partial license plate for one of the cruisers that matches Deputy Brennan's assigned vehicle. "Do we have caller identification?" "The call came from a cell phone registered to—" He paused, eyebrows rising. "Celeste Harrington." Vivian felt the pieces shifting in her mind, rearranging themselves into a new pattern. Celeste at the gas station, photographing her license plate. Celeste at the traffic stop, providing false witness against her. Celeste calling 911 when things went too far. Celeste visiting her cell in the early morning hours, offering a phone number and cryptic warnings. The woman was playing multiple angles. But for whom? "I need to speak with Celeste Harrington," Vivian said. "Privately?" The interview room had been cleared except for 2 chairs facing each other across the small table. No recorder visible, though Vivian knew federal protocols required documentation. The recording equipment would be hidden, which suited her purposes. Celeste entered looking significantly less composed than she had during any of their previous encounters. Her designer clothes were wrinkled, her makeup faded, her eyes carrying the weight of a sleepless night. "They told me I'm not under arrest," she said, settling into the chair across from Vivienne. "That I'm here voluntarily to answer questions." "That is correct. For now." Celeste's eyes narrowed. "For now? What does that mean?" "It means that your status depends entirely on what you tell me in the next few minutes." Vivian leaned forward slightly. "Let us begin with the truth. Who are you really working for, Ms. Harrington?" A long silence stretched between them, Celeste's hands twisted in her lap. The same nervous gesture she had shown outside the cell hours earlier. "If I tell you," she said finally, "I need guarantees, protection. My family cannot know. I can make no guarantees until I understand what you are offering." Celeste closed her eyes briefly, then opened them with something like resolve. "I've been feeding information to the FBI for 2 years. Not officially, nothing formal, just tips, anonymous reports, things I observed at Foundation events that didn't seem right." "What kind of things?" "Money moving in ways that made no sense. Donations from companies that didn't exist. Grants to charities that had no actual programs. My family has been part of the Foundation for generations, but something changed about 5 years ago. New board members, new priorities, new partners." "Partners like Deputy Brennan?" Celeste's laugh was bitter. "Brennan is nothing. A useful tool. The real partners are much higher up. County commissioners, state legislators, maybe federal, I don't know." She paused. "I started documenting what I could. Photographs of documents, recordings of conversations. I passed them along through channels I thought were secure." "Why? What motivated you to turn against your own family's organization?" "Because I know what they did to build it. Celeste's voice dropped. The Foundation's wealth comes from generations of exploitation, redlining, predatory lending, destroying black communities and calling it urban renewal. I grew up benefiting from that legacy without understanding it. When I finally did understand, she shook her head. I couldn't keep pretending. Vivian studied her for a long moment. The story was plausible. The emotion seemed genuine, but something still did not fit. Last night at the gas station, you photographed my license plate. At the traffic stop, you provided false witness against me. Then you called 911 when Brennan took me to that clearing. And finally, you visited my cell and offered me a phone number with promises of information. She paused. That is a complicated series of moves for someone who is supposedly working with federal investigators. I didn't know who you were. Celeste's voice rose with frustration. I saw a black woman in an expensive car, and I assumed what everyone in this county assumes, that it didn't belong to you, that you were out of place, that you needed to be investigated. So you acted on those assumptions. Yes, and I am not proud of it. But when I saw what Brennan was doing, when they took you to that clearing, I knew it had gone too far. I've seen what happens to women who disappear in this county. I couldn't be part of that. And the phone number you gave me? My direct line. Because I knew that, whoever you really were, you had just become the most dangerous threat this county has ever faced. And I wanted to be on the right side when everything collapsed. If you are invested in this story, hit that subscribe button to see justice served. The next 72 hours moved with the relentless precision of federal machinery engaging its gears. Vivian's body cam footage, combined with the audio recording from her phone, provided an unassailable timeline of events. Deputy Brennan's body cam, which had indeed been running throughout the entire encounter, captured his whispered confession of personal vendetta, his use of the wrong name, and, most damning of all, the 17-minute gap during the detour to Miller Road, where his camera showed only darkness, but his voice could be heard making threats. The evidence against Detective Ashford mounted quickly. Fingerprint analysis confirmed he was the only person who had touched the evidence bag. Financial records, obtained through emergency federal warrant, showed regular deposits into his personal account from a shell company traced back to the Callaway Community Foundation. But it was the connection to Deputy Brennan that broke the case wide open. Vivian sat in the Federal Operations Center that had been established in the Callaway County Courthouse, reviewing documents on a secure laptop. The screen displayed bank records that told their own damning story. Deputy C. Brennan, she read aloud, account ending 4471. Deposits, $5,000, March 15th. $5,000, June 22nd. $7,500, September 10th. All transfers originating from Callaway Community Foundation General Fund. Special Agent Morrison stood beside her, watching the same screen. Brennan was on their payroll. The personal vendetta against this Nadine woman gave him motivation, but someone else saw an opportunity. The Foundation knew I was coming. Vivian's voice was flat with certainty. Someone in our task force leaked information. They knew a federal agent would be at the gala, and they needed to stop that before it happened. Brennan's grudge gave them the perfect cover. A racist traffic stop gone wrong looks like individual misconduct. It doesn't look like obstruction of a federal investigation. Except they did not count on the vehicle I was driving, or the surveillance systems monitoring it. Morrison nodded slowly. The FBI satellite tracking showed everything. The stop on County Road 7, the deviation to Miller Road, the rapid departure when another vehicle arrived. He paused. We have overhead imagery of you being dragged from that patrol car, Agent Okafor. It is not easy viewing. I imagine not. When this goes public, when the full scope of what they tried to do becomes clear, there will be consequences that extend far beyond Callaway County. Vivian turned from the screen to face him. That is precisely what I intend. The administrative hearing took place 6 weeks after the incident, in the main chamber of the Callaway County Administrative Building. The room had been transformed for the occasion. A raised platform held the hearing panel, 3 external investigators appointed by the Department of Justice, their faces carefully neutral. Tables for witnesses and counsel faced the panel. Behind them, rows of chairs filled with observers, journalists, community members, anyone who had managed to secure one of the limited public seats. Vivian entered wearing a navy suit, her bearing professional, her expression composed. The gold dress had been preserved as evidence, each tear and stain documented, photographed, catalogued, as proof of what had happened on that rural highway. She took her seat at the witness table, aware of the cameras, the watching eyes, the weight of the moment. Agent Okafor, the panel chair, a silver-haired woman with the sharp gaze of a former federal prosecutor, began the proceedings. You are here today to provide testimony regarding the events of September 14th. Please state your full name and position for the record. Vivian Okafor, Special Agent, Federal Bureau of Investigation, Civil Rights Division. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Most had heard rumors about the mysterious woman in the gold dress, but federal confirmation carried different weight. Please describe the events of that evening, beginning with your departure from Atlanta. Vivian spoke for nearly an hour, her account precise, detailed, supported by documentation that appeared on screens throughout the chamber. The photographs of the gas station receipt, the audio recording with its damning timestamps, the body cam footage that captured Brennan's whispered vendetta and Dunmore's threats, the satellite imagery showing the vehicle stopped on Miller Road. When she finished, the panel chair turned to the respondents' table, where Brennan, Dunmore, Ashford, and Vickers sat with their attorneys. Deputy Brennan, you have heard Agent Okafor's testimony. Do you wish to respond? Brennan's attorney, a heavy-set man who had been brought in from Atlanta at union expense, rose to speak. My client maintains that the traffic stop was conducted according to proper procedure, based on a legitimate dispatch report of a suspected stolen vehicle. Any personal comments made during the stop were inappropriate, but do not constitute criminal conduct. The body cam footage suggests otherwise, the panel chair observed. Deputy Brennan repeatedly addressed Agent Okafor by the wrong name and made explicit reference to a personal grudge dating back 3 years. How do you explain this? The attorney shifted uncomfortably. My client acknowledges that he believed Agent Okafor to be someone else, a woman who had previously caused him significant personal distress. This was a case of mistaken identity. Nothing more. Mistaken identity that led to a 17-minute detour to an isolated location, the chair continued, where, according to satellite imagery and audio recording, threats were made and physical force was applied to a restrained individual. Is that also simple mistaken identity? Silence from the respondent's table. The chair turned to address the next respondent. Detective Ashford, fingerprint analysis confirms that you were the only person to handle the evidence bag allegedly containing controlled substances. The bag was found to contain a common household cleaning compound, not cocaine. Additionally, financial records show regular payments to your personal account from entities connected to the Callaway Community Foundation. Do you have an explanation? Ashford's attorney rose, younger and more nervous than Brennan's counsel. My client invokes his Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination and declines to answer questions that may tend to implicate him in criminal conduct. So noted. The chair made a notation. Sergeant Vickers, you arrived at the scene and assumed supervisory responsibility. Your body cam footage shows you misapplying case law to justify the search of Agent Okafor's vehicle. Do you dispute this characterization? Vickers, who had been staring at the table throughout the proceedings, finally looked up. Unlike the others, he had chosen not to bring an attorney, a decision that now seemed to weigh on him. I don't dispute it, he said quietly. I made assumptions based on what my officers told me. I didn't verify. I didn't question. I just went along with it. He paused. I've been going along with things in this department for 23 years. This is just the first time it became impossible to ignore. The admission sent another ripple through the chamber. Vickers' attorneyless confession suggested something his colleagues had not anticipated: cooperation. The hearing continued for 3 days, witness after witness, adding their pieces to the mosaic of corruption and misconduct. Officer Delia Ngui testified about discovering the federal flag on the vehicle and her attempts to alert supervisors who did not want to hear what she had found. Celeste Harrington took the stand and detailed 2 years of covert documentation. Her testimony, supported by photographs, recordings, and financial documents that traced money from the foundation through shell companies to accounts controlled by law enforcement officers throughout the county. Captain Lenora Stahl testified about the pressure she had faced to make the arrest stick, pressure that came from above her pay grade, from people whose names she was reluctant to speak aloud. And then came the revelation that transformed the hearing from a local misconduct investigation into a federal earthquake. Agent Okafor? The panel chair's voice carried a new weight as she introduced the next phase of testimony. You have submitted evidence regarding the woman Deputy Brennan believed you to be. A woman named Nadine. Please share what your investigation has uncovered. Vivian rose and walked to the presentation screen where a photograph appeared. A young black woman in a yellow dress, standing outside a courthouse, her smile bright against the Georgia sun. Nadine Eloise Patterson, Vivian said, born March 7, 1989, in Callaway County, raised here, educated here, worked as a paralegal for the County Public Defender's Office for 4 years. She clicked to the next image, the same woman, older now, seated at a desk covered with files. Ms. Patterson developed concerns about patterns she observed in criminal cases processed through the Callaway court system. Specifically, she noticed that defendants who could not afford bail were significantly more likely to accept plea deals that included mandatory probation through a private company called New Horizon Supervision Services. Another click. Financial documents filled the screen. New Horizon is a subsidiary of the Callaway Community Foundation. Ms. Patterson documented what she believed to be a coordinated scheme to generate probationers who would then be required to pay monthly supervision fees, drug testing fees, and other costs that funneled money back to Foundation-connected entities. Vivian paused, letting the implications settle. On August 3rd, 3 years ago, Ms. Patterson attended a social gathering at a local establishment called Rusty's Bar and Grill. According to witnesses, she encountered Deputy Colt Brennan, who made unwanted advances. When she rejected him, he became belligerent. In front of multiple witnesses, she told him, and I quote from sworn statements, "You're a pathetic little man playing dress-up with a badge. The only power you'll ever have is the kind you steal from others." The chamber had gone completely silent. Brennan sat frozen at the respondents' table, his face drained of color. Deputy Brennan, by multiple accounts, was humiliated by this encounter. He allegedly swore revenge. Vivian clicked to the next image. 17 months later, Ms. Patterson's car was struck by a hit-and-run driver while she was stopped at a red light on County Road 7. She died at the scene. The other vehicle was never identified. She let that sink in before continuing. I have obtained a copy of Ms. Patterson's death certificate, dated February 19th, 2 years and 7 months ago. This means that on the night Deputy Brennan stopped me, convinced I was Nadine Patterson come to face his revenge, the real Nadine Patterson had already been dead for over 2 years. The murmur that swept through the chamber was not quite shock, not quite horror, but something combining both. Deputy Brennan was not pursuing justice or even personal revenge against a living woman. He was chasing a ghost. And in his obsession, he nearly destroyed another woman's life, compromised a federal investigation, and exposed a network of corruption that had been operating in this county for years. She clicked one final time. A document filled the screen, the official incident report from Ms. Patterson's fatal accident. The investigating officer on the Patterson hit-and-run case was Detective Milo Ashford. The case was closed after 3 weeks with no suspects identified. She turned to face the panel directly. I am formally requesting that this case be reopened as a potential homicide investigation. This story is reaching its climax. Tap subscribe to stay with us until the end. The panel deliberated for 9 hours before returning with their findings. The chamber was packed beyond capacity when the chair rose to deliver the verdict, spectators standing along the walls, cameras positioned for maximum coverage, the weight of the moment pressing down on everyone present. This panel has reviewed extensive evidence regarding the events of September 14th and the broader pattern of misconduct within the Callaway County Sheriff's Department. The chair's voice carried clearly through the hushed space. Our findings are as follows. She turned to address the respondents directly. Deputy Colt Brennan, this panel finds that you conducted an unlawful traffic stop based on personal vendetta rather than legitimate law enforcement purpose. You violated Georgia Code O.C.G.A, Section 17-5-25 by failing to identify yourself and state the reason for the stop. You violated 18 U.S.C. Section 242 by depriving Agent Okafor of her civil rights under color of law. You detained her in an isolated location with apparent intent to cause harm, prevented only by the arrival of a third party. This panel recommends immediate termination and referral for criminal prosecution. Brennan did not react visibly, but his attorney's face had gone gray. Officer Trey Dunmore, this panel finds that you participated in the unlawful detention of Agent Okafor, applied excessive force during the arrest, deliberately made handcuffs unreasonably tight causing injury, and made verbal threats while Agent Okafor was restrained. This panel recommends termination and referral for criminal prosecution on charges of excessive force and civil rights violations. Detective Milo Ashford, this panel finds that you planted false evidence in Agent Okafor's vehicle, filed fraudulent reports, and received payment from entities under federal investigation for corruption. Additionally, this panel notes serious concerns about your handling of the Nadine Patterson fatality investigation and recommends that case be reopened. This panel recommends termination and referral for criminal prosecution on charges of evidence tampering, filing false reports, and conspiracy. Sergeant Rowan Vickers, this panel finds that you failed to properly supervise officers under your command, misapplied legal precedent to justify unlawful searches, and showed disregard for established procedure. However, this panel also notes your cooperation with investigators and your testimony regarding departmental pressure to overlook misconduct. This panel recommends written reprimand and mandatory retraining with continued employment contingent on satisfactory performance review. Captain Lenora Stahl. This panel finds that you failed to investigate red flags in your subordinate's conduct, prioritized institutional protection over proper procedure, and displayed inadequate oversight of officers with documented history of complaints. This panel recommends placement on administrative leave, pending further investigation into departmental command failures. The chair paused, shuffling papers before continuing. Finally, this panel notes that the evidence presented suggests misconduct extending far beyond the officers present today. Accordingly, we are recommending that the Department of Justice open a formal pattern or practice investigation into the Callaway County Sheriff's Department under 42 U.S.C. Section 14141. We are also recommending that federal investigators examine financial connections between department personnel and the Callaway Community Foundation. She removed her reading glasses and looked out at the assembled crowd. What happened to Agent Okafor was not an isolated incident. It was a symptom of systemic failure, systemic corruption, systemic disregard for the rights of citizens, particularly citizens of color. This community deserves better. This panel is committed to ensuring they receive it. The gavel fell, and the chamber erupted. 3 weeks after the hearing, Vivian stood outside the Callaway County Jail, watching the sun set over the pine trees. The facility was small, meant for short-term detention, not the long sentences that awaited some of its newest residents. The door opened behind her, and a guard emerged, escorting a figure in orange jumpsuit and shackles. Colt Brennan looked different in prisoner's clothing, smaller somehow. The bravado that had seemed so imposing on the roadside had collapsed into something hollow-eyed and haunted. "You asked to see me," Vivian said as the guard positioned Brennan on the bench beside her, keeping a respectful distance. "Before your transfer to federal holding, I needed to know." His voice was rough, stripped of its former menace. "You're not her. You were never her." "No, I was never Nadine Patterson." "But you knew her?" Vivian was silent for a long moment, watching the last light fade from the sky. "I knew of her," she said finally. "Her case file crossed my desk 18 months ago. A paralegal who had been documenting corruption, who had died under suspicious circumstances, whose investigation had been closed without resolution." She paused. "Her file is part of the reason I was assigned to investigate the Callaway Community Foundation." Brennan's head dropped. "She's really dead. She has been dead for over 2 years. You spent 3 years nursing a grudge against a woman who was already gone. You nearly destroyed your life, my life, your entire department, chasing a ghost." "I was so sure." His voice cracked. "When I saw you in that car, in that dress, I was absolutely certain. 3 years of waiting, and there she was. Finally, you saw what you wanted to see, what your hatred needed to see." Vivian turned to face him directly. "That is the nature of obsession. It blinds us to everything except its own fulfillment. Does it matter? Does any of this matter?" Brennan laughed bitterly. "I'm going to prison, probably for years. My career is over. My life is over. And Nadine, the real Nadine, she's still dead. Nothing changed." "Everything changed." Vivienne's voice sharpened. "Because of your actions. Because of what you forced into the light. An entire network of corruption is being dismantled. Officers who abused their power are facing consequences. A foundation that exploited communities for generations is under federal investigation. The case of Nadine Patterson's death is being reinvestigated as a potential homicide. She stood, looking down at him. You did not intend any of this. You acted out of petty vengeance and personal obsession. But the result, the unintended result, is that justice is finally being served. Not for you. Not because of you. Despite you. She turned to walk away, then paused. There is one more thing you should know. She did not turn around. Nadine Patterson had a sister. A younger sister who watched her sibling fight against corruption. Watched her die under suspicious circumstances. Watched the investigation go nowhere. A pause. That sister joined the FBI 6 years ago. She has spent her entire career preparing to finish what Nadine started. Now she turned, meeting his eyes one final time. My mother was born Okafor, but my father's name was Patterson. Nadine was my half-sister, Deputy Brennan. You stopped the wrong woman on that highway, but you stopped exactly the right one to bring this all down. She walked away without looking back, leaving him to digest the final twist in a story he had never understood. The weeks that followed brought changes that rippled outward from Callaway County like stones dropped in still water. The Department of Justice announced their pattern or practice investigation, dispatching teams of lawyers and investigators who descended on the county with subpoenas and interview requests. The Callaway Community Foundation suspended operations pending federal review. Its board members suddenly unavailable for comment, its charity galas indefinitely postponed. Officer Delia Nguyen received a commendation for her actions during the incident and was promoted to a newly created community liaison position. She testified at 3 separate proceedings, her quiet courage serving as counterpoint to the corruption that had surrounded her. Celeste Harrington's cooperation with federal investigators earned her immunity from prosecution, though her family's legacy would never recover from the revelations. She sold her interest in the Harrington estate and left Callaway County, reportedly relocating somewhere in the Pacific Northwest. Captain Stahl resigned before her administrative leave concluded, citing health reasons. Sources within the department suggested she had been offered a choice: resign quietly or face deeper investigation into what she had known and when she had known it. The Nadine Patterson case was officially reopened as a homicide investigation. Within 6 weeks, federal analysts had identified the vehicle involved in the hit-and-run through paint transfer analysis that the original investigation had somehow overlooked. The vehicle was registered to a shell company connected to the foundation. 3 persons of interest were identified. Arrests were pending. Vivian returned to her Atlanta apartment on a Tuesday evening, 6 weeks and 4 days after the night that had changed everything. The gold dress had been returned to her, sealed in an evidence bag, no longer needed for prosecution, but preserved as a reminder. She hung the bag in her closet without opening it. Some things were better left sealed. Her phone buzzed with a message from Special Agent Morrison. DOJ press conference tomorrow. They want you there. Director's request. She typed a brief acknowledgement and set the phone aside. The apartment was quiet, filled with the particular silence of spaces that have been empty too long. She moved through the rooms, opening windows, checking locks, falling back into the rituals of normalcy that had been suspended for weeks. In her home office, a stack of mail waited on the desk. Bills, mostly, and official correspondence that her neighbor had collected during her absence. She sorted through it mechanically until a single envelope caught her attention. No return address. Her name handwritten in careful script. Postmarked from Callaway County, dated 3 days ago. She opened it carefully, extracting a single photograph and a folded note. The photograph showed 2 young women standing in front of the Callaway County Courthouse, arms around each other, smiling at the camera. One wore a yellow dress, the other a blue sundress. Sisters, obviously. The resemblance was unmistakable. Vivian touched the face of the woman in yellow. Nadine, alive, happy, unaware of what waited ahead. The note was brief, written in the same careful hand as the envelope. For when you are ready to finish what I started, N. Beneath the message, a series of numbers and letters that Vivienne recognized as an encrypted file reference, the kind used by federal systems for classified documents. She stared at the note for a long time. Nadine had been dead for over 2 years. This letter could not be from her. Unless Nadine had prepared it before her death. Unless she had known what was coming, had made arrangements, had set in motion a contingency that would activate only when the right person, the right circumstances, the right moment aligned. Unless the sister she had never acknowledged, the sister she had protected by keeping her distance, was always meant to be the one who finished the fight. Vivian walked to her window and looked out at the Atlanta skyline, the city lights beginning to flicker on as darkness fell. Somewhere out there, the machinery of justice was grinding forward. Somewhere, corrupt men were calculating their exposure. Somewhere, victims were finally being heard. But the letter in her hand suggested that the full truth was still waiting, still hidden, still protected by whatever precautions Nadine had put in place. Her phone buzzed again, this time an unknown number. She answered. Agent Okafor. The voice was distorted, unidentifiable. Brennan was expendable. The Foundation will continue. Your sister learned that the hard way. The line went dead before she could respond. Vivian set the phone down carefully, her expression unchanged. She had expected this, had prepared for it. The Foundation's roots went deeper than one county, one state, one set of corrupt officers. Cutting off branches would not kill the tree. But she had time now. She had resources. She had the full weight of federal investigation behind her. And she had whatever Nadine had left for her, waiting in an encrypted file somewhere in the system. She walked to her desk, sat down, and began typing the access code from the note. The screen flickered, then displayed a prompt. Patterson N. Archive. Enter authorization. Vivian entered her badge number, her access codes, and finally, the phrase that Nadine had always used as their private signal. A phrase from their childhood. A phrase that no one else would know. The brightest gold is forged in the darkest fire. The screen changed. Files began to populate, hundreds of them, organized by date, by subject, by level of evidence. Names she recognized. Names she did not. Transactions, photographs, recordings, documents that painted a picture of corruption reaching far beyond Callaway County, far beyond Georgia, into corridors of power that would take years to fully expose. Nadine's legacy, Nadine's unfinished work, waiting for the sister who had always been meant to find it. Vivian began to read. The morning sun rose over Callaway County, painting the courthouse steps in shades of gold and amber. The building looked different now, somehow, as if the revelations of recent weeks had stripped away a layer of pretense to reveal the structure beneath. Vivian stood across the street, watching early workers arrive, watching the flag rise to full mast, watching the ordinary rhythms of a community trying to find its way forward. Her phone buzzed. Director's office, confirming her appointment for 9 a.m. She had been offered a choice: return to routine assignments or lead a new task force dedicated to following the threads that Nadine's archive had revealed. The decision was already made, had been made the moment she opened that encrypted file, had perhaps been made years ago when she first learned that her sister had died, fighting a battle she could not win alone. The foundation would continue, the distorted voice had promised. And so would she. She crossed the street and walked toward the courthouse, past the spot where Nadine had once stood in her yellow dress, smiling at a camera, believing that truth and persistence would eventually prevail. The morning light caught something on the sidewalk, a glint of gold that made Vivian pause. She bent down and picked up what appeared to be a small charm, a butterfly with crystal wings, the kind that might have fallen from a bracelet or necklace. She held it up to the light, watching it sparkle, remembering the gold dress that now hung sealed in her closet. Remembering the night that had changed everything. In her pocket, her phone buzzed once more. A text from a number she did not recognize. She wore that charm the day she died. Now you carry it forward. A friend. Vivian looked around, scanning the street, the courthouse steps, the windows of surrounding buildings. No one seemed to be watching. No one seemed out of place. But someone was there. Someone who knew. Someone who had been watching over Nadine's mission, and now over hers. She pocketed the charm and continued walking toward the courthouse, toward the meeting that would determine the next phase of the investigation, toward whatever waited in the years ahead. The sun climbed higher, burning away the morning mist, illuminating a county that would never be quite the same. Justice had been served, partially, imperfectly, with threads still dangling and questions still unanswered. But the work continued. The archive waited. The truth, or at least more of it, remained to be uncovered. Vivian Okafor, special agent, sister of a woman who had died fighting for justice, walked into the courthouse with the butterfly charm warm in her pocket and the weight of unfinished business settling on her shoulders like a mantle. Somewhere, Nadine's ghost smiled. The story was far from over.